Hello, my name is Kiana Dobson, and I am the project coordinator with We Can Stop STDs LA.
My name is Asha Moore. I am the program analyst with We Can Stop STDs LA. We also have a We Can Stop STDs LA team member as tech support.
Welcome to our presentation, Community Engagement and Intervention Design, working with LA County faith communities to promote STD prevention, testing, and treatment among youth. Today, we'll tell you a little bit about who we are and talk about our work engaging folks of faith to address STDs among young people, as well as do a deeper dive into one of our signature projects, the Interfaith Toolkit. That means our objectives for today are to describe how faith community engagement can be an important strategy, describe the engagement process that led to the Toolkit Intervention Project, and to describe how we are developing the Interfaith STD Prevention Toolkit. So a little bit about us. We Can Stop STDs LA is a coalition of organizations and people who live, work, serve, play, and worship in Los Angeles County, California, where sexually transmitted diseases, or STDs, continue to rise and young people are particularly vulnerable. The group came together in 2012 because of the high level of STDs among young people and because we saw a lot of inequity where young Black and Latinx individuals were more greatly impacted. So we are focused on young people 12 through 24 years of age. We are multi-sectoral with county agencies, faith-based organizations, community-based organizations, LA County residents, other groups. Our approach includes leveraging collective resources, working to increase dialogue in the community, and engaging multiple stakeholders and champions, including stakeholders and champions in faith communities, which will be our focus in this presentation.
So why is the faith community engagement so important, and how have we engaged the faith community around the STD conversation, particularly focusing on youth? Well, the faith community has many strengths. Many people come to places of faith for answers and guidance. Other strengths includes collectivity and support, as well as affirmation, really upholding the goodness and committing to the spiritual, emotional, and physical health of their communities. And therefore, the faith community not only has the opportunity to become an institution, but also to transition into a resource. Places of worship and faith are often already involved in community health work and goodwill projects such as homelessness and HIV, and therefore involving them in the STD conversation, we believe, is a great next step. We do recognize the potential challenges, however, of entering into places of faith with this information, as sex is often a taboo topic, and therefore we recognize that careful considerations and messaging are necessary. So how do we begin our faith community engagement? We started by creating the Interfaith Working Group in 2014-2015, which began opening the door for the STD conversation within the faith community. And that was done by convening two events called the Circle of Faith. One was a breakfast and one was a dinner, in which over 100 faith leaders attended collectively. After each event, we did an assessment survey to figure out whether faith leaders were interested in having STD education implemented into their places of faith, as well as we want to know more about their wants and needs around sexual and reproductive health education. From our survey results and from the discussions held at our events, we found that the faith leaders were interested in STD prevention resources. However, they did not necessarily have the tools and resources to address STDs on their own, and thus began the work of the STD Prevention Toolkit, which is founded in compassion, inclusivity, open communication, and can be flexible enough to use in multiple faith communities. The toolkit will include STD facts to increase faith leaders' awareness and knowledge about STDs. Our product will also include relevant resources that faith leaders can refer laity to. It will also include sample sermons to help faith leaders prepare and develop homiletics and religious reflections on STD prevention and the importance of acknowledging youth's health. It will also have an STD prevention curriculum that can be delivered in youth groups. And for the rest of this webinar, we will focus on the largest component of the toolkit, which is the curriculum. And before I begin a deeper dive into that, we'd like to give you a little more context around its development.
So in California, we have a law called the California Healthy Youth Act, also known as CHIA, and that requires our public schools to provide comprehensive sexual health education. It's a really good framework for sex ed to be built on. So while our curriculum is guided by CHIA, it's not meant to take the place of school sex ed, but rather be more supplementary. So it'll help young people hear the message of healthy lifestyles from another source in their community, and help faith leaders contribute to ending the STD epidemic in a compassionate and medically accurate way. We don't ask or expect faith leaders to become experts in sexual and reproductive health. Rather, our goal is for them to use the toolkit to learn about STD prevention and help equip young people.
And we really have two visions for our curriculum to bridge the gap between faith practices and knowledge about STDs and reproductive health, as well as provide prevention in the form that also acknowledges places of faith, spiritual, religious cultures, and beliefs. And we believe being cognizant of these two factors can greatly impact youth making healthy decisions, help reduce risky behaviors, while simultaneously reducing the rising rates of STDs within youth who attend their places of faith. So this is a curriculum is for youth faith leaders accompanied by adult faith leaders to help guide youth and young adults ages 12 to 17 years old to learn about STDs, seek testing and treatment, and reduce risky sexual behaviors. As mentioned previously, the curriculum will be supplementary to what's going on in schools and will be an appendix to CHIA. However, of course, it will be faith-based. Now, what is our process? So after the Circle of Faith feedback, I would like to now share with you how we have gone through the process of creating the curriculum. We really want to focus on separating acquiring a sexually transmitted disease from sin and shame, and creating an atmosphere of self-love, respect, compassion, and sensitivity. So we began by drafting the curriculum. We Can Stop STDs LA team conducted background research on existing curricula, seeking input on the most important issues and topics to address in the curriculum, which allowed us to develop our first initial draft, as well as a facilitator's guide. We are now currently in our initial feedback process, meeting with the Interfaith working group to get feedback on the first drafted curriculum, as well as we developed a multi-faith advisory group to conduct one-on-one focused conversations, getting feedback from multiple stakeholders, which include faith leaders, youth and young adults, and public health officials, and other nonprofit community leaders who work with STDs and sexual reproductive health issues. Once we complete our focus conversations, we will incorporate that feedback into the curriculum in preparation for our piloting phase. We would like to pilot the curriculum with at least 4 different faith communities with an anticipated 8 to 12 youth per convening. We will recruit teams of adults and faith leaders from each faith community to conduct the training with the support and guidance of the We Can Stop STDs LA team. Once that is completed, we will gather the immediate feedback from the adult and youth trainers, as well as the youth participants in the training. Once completed, we will move to finalizing the curriculum between October 2020 and February 2021, in which the We Can Stop STDs LA team will revise the curriculum based off the feedback we received, meet with the Interfaith working group to review the final changes, and submit to the Los Angeles County Department of Public Health for approval. Once that is completed, we will distribute the curriculum to those interested in incorporating sexual and reproductive health education within their faith communities, which will also come with the facilitator's guide to help implement the curriculum in a way that aligns with the faith community's culture and is sensitive to the needs of their youth. So by the end of the curriculum, the program, the youth will be able to identify what STDs stand for, name at least 5 common STDs that indicate whether an STD is viral, bacterial, preventable, incurable, or just preventable, understand how STDs are transmitted and how to reduce the risk of getting one, as well as be able to list at least 1 place to get tested and treated for an STD.
So in closing, there are faith leaders who are open to providing STD prevention messaging, but may not have the proper support or educational resources to do so. So we are designing an inclusive, unbiased intervention that provides faith leaders with a means to promote STD prevention, testing, and treatment.
And again, the purpose of the toolkit is to really help faith leaders provide spiritual support through encouragement, protective and promotive factors, open communication, compassion, with well-informed guidance and information, helping youth navigate risky behaviors and making healthy choices. If you would like to know more and have more information about the Interfaith STD Prevention Toolkit, our general contact information is below, and please feel free to reach out to us. Thank you so much.
Hi everyone, this is Adrienne Hensey, and the title of this presentation is HIV Prevention Strategies in Texas, a Condom Distribution Program. The purpose of our program is to address structural and social conditions that impact access, service use, and health outcomes for people living in Texas by reducing barriers through an equity-oriented platform. And we do this by addressing the 3 A's in the condom distribution structural level intervention: availability, accessibility, and acceptability. Brief history: we were originally funded in 2013 by the Texas Department of State Health Services to serve only Bexar County, Texas, and at the time the program was called the PLAY campaign, which stood for Please Look After Yourself. In 2017, we did receive additional funding after it was apparent that our services were needed across the state, and we did then change our name to Texas Wears Condoms to reflect our new service area. The program is part of University Health System, which is a nationally recognized teaching hospital owned by the people of Bexar County. The image on the left will show you Bexar County. It is highlighted in red, so that was our original service area. And then on the right is just a colorful map of Texas, which is now our new service area. Marketing and social media. So we do currently utilize Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Tumblr. And we do that for several reasons. So using social media is inexpensive, it's efficient, and it's effective. On the right there, you will see one of our program posters. So those are distributed to businesses and organizations that we do provide supplies to. And then these other images are just examples of some of the content that we've posted on several of those platforms. Addressing structural barriers. So we do have a dedicated website that is mobile friendly, where individuals can come place orders for condoms, lubricants, and dental dams. And the website was very important in addressing individuals who've been marginalized, underserved, and are otherwise geographically isolated, so that they do have access to our services. And with that, we do provide free condoms. The shipping is always free, and individuals can come back every 30 days to place a new order. Improving experience and providing a variety. So the website was created with the specific intention of allowing individuals to have a sort of shopping experience. So them being able to really pick and choose what they want. So down here on the left-hand side, you will see examples of the packages that we do offer on our website, as well as there's an option for create your own. So individuals who already know what they want only maybe just one specific type of condom, or maybe they're just looking to order maybe just dental dams or just lubricant, they do have that option as well. We provide education on the website, as well as a list of testing agencies across the state that individuals can look for by the city that they reside in. Maintaining community collaborations. So we do partner with organizations, businesses, health departments, and clinics all across the state. We do also partner with universities and community colleges, and that's really been vital in reaching youth 18 to 24. And we have also partnered with private agencies hosting lifestyle conferences or private parties. So how do we do it all? We are made up of 5 staff. So myself, the coordinator, 3 full-time outreach staff, and 1 part-time staff. We do utilize third-party agencies to help with address cleansing and validation, so ensuring that individuals who are ordering are providing a deliverable address. Label creation, which does include a tracking number that we do provide to individuals. Shipping fulfillment, and then a third party to really do maintenance and management for the website. Each individual is asked to fill out an online survey using the online software RedCap, and that survey is not mandatory, so individuals do not have to do the survey to receive their products. Tailoring to ensure program success. So offering pre-made packages for individuals to select from, limiting the amount of orders each month. So the limits were placed so that we we didn't fall behind, like taking too many orders for the month, and really to ensure that we were able to fulfill the amount of orders that we were receiving. Cross-training staff on all program processes and procedures, rearranging our supply room to lean methodology. So before we only had one packing station, now we have 4, and each one is very specific to a type of package. Outsourcing to third parties to reduce costs, and then ultimately using Hootsuite, which is a social media management platform. And it's been very useful. As you can see, all of your platforms in one localized area. It does provide you with analytics that you can then use to tailor your content, but also track the success of the content that you're putting out there. And is it content that your audience is engaging with and wanting to see? So evaluation. These charts show really just our growth over the years since we went statewide. So in 2017, we were able to distribute 1.1 million condoms, but last year we were able to distribute 1.9 million. So who's ordering? Over 60% of our customers identified as ethnic minorities, mostly Hispanic, followed by African Americans. Majority of our consumers reside in areas with the highest HIV case rates in the state, so really our big metro areas, San Antonio, Houston, Dallas, and Fort Worth. Over 50% of the individuals served through the program are youth between 18 to 24, and data does show that this age range do have lower rates of testing and condom use, but increased rates of STDs. So how are people hearing about us? A lot of it is social media and word of mouth from friends. And in regards to social media, this does show which platforms they're hearing about us from. So Facebook and Instagram take the bulk of that. But I do want to highlight that TikTok has now been mentioned, and it's a relatively new app that individuals in the Gen Z generation are utilizing. So barriers to obtaining condoms. So survey respondents did say, a majority of them, that they're too expensive, they're too embarrassing to purchase, or they're not sure what kind to purchase. So us offering individuals variety really allows them the ability to try multiple types and then ultimately figure out what's going to work for them. Some of our successes: we have distributed to over 800 cities and towns, touched over 1,400 zip codes, and shipped over 56,000 packages. And this has just been from 2017 to 2019. We have reached areas of the state with the lowest rates of retention and care, highest community viral load, and lowest number of resources. As mentioned earlier, we have a majority of the individuals ordering are from 18 to 24, and we have identified the need for more PrEP education. So survey respondents, over 60% of them stated that they have never heard of PrEP. Lessons learned. A slow, planned rollout of services is necessary, and do not underestimate the power of word of mouth and social media. Standardized workflows and processes are crucial to avoid program disruptions, and assessing your organization's capacity and current relationships can really help minimize the amount of work that you'll have to put in. So here's my contact information in case anybody has any questions or wants to reach out. And then on the right, you'll see our website as well as our handle for Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ashley Hill, and today I will be presenting on a gender-transformative violence prevention program that demonstrated improvements in sexual health self-efficacy for young women. Our research team at UPMC Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh has no conflicts of interest, and this work was funded through several mechanisms, including the Allegheny County Department of Health Human Services. Adolescent relationship abuse, or ARA, is defined as any physical, sexual, and emotional violence in a romantic or sexual relationship. This impacts roughly 11% of adolescent girls aged 13 to 18 in the U.S. Furthermore, about 7% of girls report experiences of sexual violence from a romantic partner. Black women and girls in the U.S. experience a disproportionately high prevalence of ARA compared to their white peers. Experiences of ARA may lead to increased risk of and greater racial disparities in reproductive coercion, unintended pregnancy, and sexually transmitted infections. Gender transformative approaches to violence prevention refer to the interventions that equip participants with critical analytic skills to challenge rigid social norms that perpetuate gender inequity and condone violence. These programs, grounded in social cognitive and social norms theory, challenge gender and power and have demonstrated effectiveness in reducing violence perpetration among boys and young men. However, these programs have not been widely evaluated in U.S. community-based settings with adolescent girls. Sisterhood 2.0 is a gender-transformative, community-based ARA and violence prevention program for high school-aged girls. The Sisterhood 2.0 curriculum was adapted from Program M, created in 2006 by Promundo to address health and empowerment of young women in Brazil. The program involved 8 3-hour sessions offered once or twice weekly. Topics engage young women in challenging rigid and non-equitable stereotypes about masculinity and femininity and how they affect both women and men's health and well-being. Participants explore gender and power, recognition of violence in relationships, conflict resolution, healthy sexuality, and reproductive justice. Our objective for this study was to assess the feasibility and acceptability of Sisterhood 2.0 and to evaluate preliminary effectiveness of this program. Participants were recruited through existing community partnerships developed by the research team and had to be high school-aged females living in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Measures collected included the participants' demographic information, and primary outcomes were attendance, retention, and program satisfaction. As exploratory secondary outcomes, we examine intervention effects through changes detected in girls' endorsement of experiences of ARA, gender equitable attitudes, and their attitudes towards women, their bystander intention, and recognition of abuse. We also asked them to report on their condom and contraceptive attitudes, self-efficacy to use condoms and contraception, knowledge of these methods, and condom use with partners in the past 4 months. 246 girls aged 13 to 19 enrolled in the study at baseline. Participants were primarily Black with a mean age of 15 years. A third of their caregivers had a college education, while another third had not completed high school. The program was implemented in community-based settings with a trusted adult facilitator at 11 sites throughout Pittsburgh. Host spaces ranged from churches to community centers. Participants were overwhelmingly accepting of the program, citing their appreciation for the advice and space to be heard, their ability to learn and reaffirm their values, how to deal with sexuality in society, and what healthy relationships should look like. Adult facilitators were also asked their feedback and discussed at length their appreciation for the group of trusted peers and adults the girls were able to engage with. One facilitator described how sisterhood is about the support, strength, and success of one another. Life is much easier when you have a circle of women who celebrate your wins, give you clarity when feeling confused, and pick you up when you're down. We help each other be accountable for our choices and actions. At baseline, girls reported experiences of physical, emotional, and sexual relationship abuse in the last 9 months. Cyber abuse was reported in roughly a third of participants from both the intervention and control group. Physical relationship abuse perpetration was also relatively high in both arms. Similar changes were observed in reporting of emotional and sexual abuse perpetration from baseline to 3 months after the program in both arms. Cyber abuse perpetration decreased in the intervention, but not in the control arm. Mean scores of gender equitable attitudes, bystander intention, and recognition of abuse remained relatively unchanged for both arms. Intervention effects were examined for all indicators. While violence, victimization, and perpetration remained relatively unchanged, interestingly, the sexual health indicator significantly improved in the sisterhood program attendees from baseline to end of program, particularly attitudes related to condoms and contraceptive attitudes, self-efficacy to use contraception, and condom use self-efficacy improved significantly in the intervention arm compared to the controls. These significant values are bolded in the table. The improvements in sexual health indicators are encouraging. While our analyses were exploratory, providing curricula that engage young women in conversations around reproductive justice, contraception knowledge, and attitudes, and dismantling gender stereotypes seems to improve comfortability with sexual health topics. This is important as minority young women are at significantly increased risk of STI and unintended pregnancies. Sexual and relationship violence prevention programs are inextricably linked to sexual health, and including curriculum on positive sexuality and healthy relationships are necessary. Thank you for your attention to this presentation, and please contact us with any specific questions on the program.
Hello, and thank you for attending this talk. My name is Steve Goodrow. I'm a professor at the University of Washington, and I will be talking today on behalf of my many co-authors, whose names you see here, about the teen-SPARC tool, and that stands for the STI Prevention and Risk Calculator. I'll present the tool overall very briefly, and then present a case study applying that tool to a question of predicting the impact of behavior change among adolescents in the US and New York State as a comparison, and what the potential impacts of that is on STI in each jurisdiction. So a quick shout out that this work and a much larger body of work that it's part of are all funded by NCHSTP as part of a cooperative agreement between them and a consortium of universities based at Emory University, but also including UW, where I am and our team is at. So teen-SPARC, very briefly, is an Excel tool and accompanying set of files that have the main goal of modeling how behavior change among sexually active adolescents in high school impacts our predictions about STI incidence and diagnoses in the coming years. It focuses on 9 subpopulations, 3 by 3 risk groups in terms of males who have sex with males, males who have sex with females, females who have sex with males, and 3 age groups. And so 3 by 3 equals 9. It also focuses on 3 infections, specifically gonorrhea, chlamydia, and HIV. And it's really designed to make maximum use of the YRBS, both the national and specific jurisdiction versions of that. It is, by default, filled with parameter values derived from the national YRBS, but as I mentioned earlier, it comes with an accompanying set of files designed to make sort of the process of getting YRBS data for a given jurisdiction for a given year relatively easy, and to get that data into the tool. So that's where the output, the inputs come from. The outputs basically include the number of infections and diagnoses in the next year for a given baseline scenario, and then how those change as one models different forms of behavior change. The 2 forms of behavior change that we have built into the model thus far are changes in condom use and changes in the frequency of sex acts. Those were chosen based on a review of the literature about the impacts of comprehensive sex education. The second of those 2 isn't necessarily the sort of focus of all kinds of comprehensive sex education, but it has been shown to be something that does change in the presence of that education. It's also something that we know is changing among adolescents generally for whatever reason. And so being able to sort of to assess its impact seemed useful to us. So those are the two that are built in right now, but we are planning to expand on those in the coming year. And we welcome feedback from users about what else we might add. And I'll come back to that on the last slide. teen-SPARC can be found at this URL, and when you go there, this is what you'll see. The web page, brief description, and then also then down at the bottom a link to the Excel tool itself, a quick start guide, manual, and these other support files. And just this is what the tool looks like when you first open it, and this is the user's manual. So as I mentioned, we set this up to look at the US and to New York State and get a comparison of them. And that's an interesting comparison because New York State is interesting. It's both like the US, it's large and diverse, and it's like the US in many ways, but it's also distinct in many ways. Here's a case that shows that. This is inputs from YRBS in terms of the percent of adolescents reporting ever having had sex. And it's lower across the board for New York State than it is in the US as a whole. You can see the three different groups we mentioned here, females with male partners, etc. You can see the three different age groups, and you see patterns you would expect, that the numbers get larger as you get older, that there's many fewer MSM than there are the other two groups. But it's sort of across the board, the percent of students reporting having had sex in any of these categories is lower than it is in the US as a whole, but with some interesting interactions. Condom use is also different in New York State than in the US as a whole. Interestingly, it's higher for MSF and FSM in New York State, but it's lower for MSM, and that'll turn out to be an interesting driver of some of the results that we see. So those are descriptions of the inputs, how one builds those into the model, puts those into the model, runs the model, and then gets these as example sort of outputs. And there's a lot going on in this slide, so let me just draw your attention to a few things. So this comes from our paper that this talk is inspired by. But so you see in the top half, you see New York State. In the bottom half, you see the national numbers. And in each case, you see a row for the baseline model without any behavior change, just using the YRBS behaviors. And then below that, you see a series of increases in condom use, both different percentages. And then as you get down to rows 5 through 7, the same percentage, but only applied to different age groups. And if you look over to the right, you see we're looking at output for gonorrhea and chlamydia in terms of the number and percent of cases averted. So there's many different ways you can parse these numbers, but let me just walk you through a few that I think shows off how one might think about using this tool. So if one's sort of working at, interested in the US as a whole and trying to understand impacts of something like Healthy People 2020 guidelines, that was interested in seeing increases in condom use of 10% over 10 years. So we're looking at 1 year in this model, so that would be an increase of 1% per year. And you see that this tool, given existing behaviors, predicts that you would see close to 10,000 cases of these two bacterial STI averted. When you put the two of them together. And you notice that the percent averted is higher than 1%. It's 1.4 or 1.3%. And that is, for many different reasons, which is why we use models. It's not simply the same as the input because of downstream effects and other complexities of the system. So another way of thinking about this is, let's say you're interested in New York State and you want to get a sense of what the impact of percent of infections averted by different levels of increase in condom use. And you can see as you go across these scenarios, of course, the more condom use, the more higher percent of cases averted. But again, that the increase of that is faster than the increase in the condom use, going all the way up to 37% of cases averted if you increase condom use by 25%. One might then again look at different ages. So if you compare managing to achieve behavior change among 16 to 17-year-olds versus 18-year-olds, perhaps through comprehensive sex ed in different grades, you see different percentages of infections averted. And that's a function of how many people there are in each of those, as well as how many are sexually active and their existing levels of condom use. And if you compare the national numbers for those to the New York State numbers, you'll see slightly higher percent of affections averted for the 16 to 7-year-olds in New York State, whereas it's slightly lower percent of affections averted in New York State when you're looking at 18-year-olds. And so that again gets at the underlying patterns of condom use and sexual activity by these jurisdictions. Another way to think about it is to, let's say you want to communicate with policymakers or internal target setting in terms of how much change would you need to avert a fixed number of cases of an STI. And so this is for New York State. We say if you wanted to avert these number of cases, you would need these different levels of increase in condom use or decrease in sex acts. You'll notice the two numbers in the two columns are not the same. Because they're being applied to different baselines, and so how much condom use you need to increase is not the same as how much sex acts you need to decrease. And also you'll notice that the column, the number is bigger in the second column for gonorrhea and chlamydia, but bigger in the first column for HIV. And again, that gets at the differences in condom use for MSM, who are driving the HIV numbers, versus the rest of the population. So there's a lot of numbers at you very quickly that give you examples of how one might use this. All of those numbers and many more are present in this paper that we have, which just appeared in the Annals of Epidemiology. So I encourage you to go look at that. And again, the teen-SPARC tool can be found at this page. I mentioned earlier on, we're interested in user feedback. So there's a URL for a user survey once you start using it, and my email address for any questions. Thank you.